Right now, off the west coast of North America, a giant piece of the planet is ripping itself apart. Not millions of years from now, not in some computer guess. Right now, deep under the ocean, a slab of rock as big as a small country is slowly tearing into pieces. And for the very first time ever, scientists have actually watched it happen. That alone would be a huge story. But it is only half of what just came out. In the same stretch of ocean, a completely different team of scientists found something even stranger. They found a chunk of the planet that was supposed to be gone, dead, erased about 30 million years ago. Except it is not gone at all. It has been hiding down there the whole time, quietly sliding under the continent in the dark. And it is sitting right underneath one of the most dangerous earthquake spots in the entire United States. Here's the part that should really get your attention. Scientists have been studying this coastline for decades. They mapped it. They named every plate. They built their earthquake warnings and their building rules around what they thought was down there. And then two teams of researchers, publishing their findings just months apart, showed everyone that the map was wrong. Not a little wrong. Wrong in a way that means there are big pieces moving down there that nobody even knew existed. So what did they actually find? How do you watch a slab of rock tear apart when it is buried miles under the sea? And most important of all, what does any of this mean if you live anywhere near the coast? We're going to walk through all of it, step by step, in plain and simple words. By the end, you will understand exactly what is happening under the Pacific Northwest, why it caught the experts off guard, and whether you should actually be worried. Stick with me, because the second discovery sounds like something straight out of a ghost story, and it is completely real. And the strangest part of all is that both of these things were sitting right there the whole time, hiding under a coastline we were sure we had already figured out, just waiting for someone to finally look closely enough to notice. But to get why any of this is such a big deal, you first have to understand the giant machine that is running underneath all of it. Real quick, before we go any further, because this part is close to my heart. If you live anywhere along this coast, stop for 1 second and look at the people in your life. Your kids, your husband or wife, your mom and dad, the people you would do absolutely anything to protect. Now picture the ground starting to shake hard and the lights go out. The phones go dead. The store shelves get stripped bare in an hour. And it is just you and them, on your own, for days, with no help coming. That thought is terrifying. I know it is. But here's the thing. It does not have to be, and that is exactly why I made something for families like yours. It is called the Family Disaster Survival System, and it is a simple, step-by-step guide that walks you and the people you love through exactly what to do, what to store, and how to keep everyone safe when disaster hits and help cannot reach you right away. It takes that cold knot of fear in your stomach and turns it into a calm, clear plan you can actually follow. The link is sitting right in the description, and I pinned it to the top comment too, so it is easy to find. Go grab it now before life gets busy and you forget, because the worst possible time to wish you had a plan is the exact moment you need one. Then come right back and let's get into what is really going on down there. The machine under the ocean. Off the coast, running all the way from Northern California up past Oregon and Washington and into Canada, there is a giant crack in the planet. You cannot see it. It is out in the ocean, far below the water, buried under the seafloor. But it is there, and it is one of the most powerful things on all of Earth. Here is what is going on. The outside of our planet is not one solid shell, like the skin of an apple. It is cracked into big slabs of rock called plates. These plates float on top of hotter, softer rock below them, and they are always moving, slowly, about as fast as your fingernails grow. You would never feel it in 100 years. But over millions of years, that slow crawl builds whole mountain ranges, opens up oceans, and yes, causes earthquakes. Along this part of the coast, two of these plates are being shoved underneath a much bigger one. The big one is the plate that all of North America sits on. That is the ground under your feet if you live in the United States. The two smaller ones are out in the ocean, and they are being forced down and under the continent, diving deep into the planet. Scientists have a name for this, but you can just picture it like this. One slab of rock is sliding under another slab, kind of like one hand slipping underneath the other. The bottom hand gets pushed down into the hot rock deep below, and over time it melts away. Here's a little detail to tuck away for later, because it is going to matter a whole lot before we are done. Those two ocean plates diving under the coast are not just random slabs of rock. They are the last leftover scraps of a much, much bigger plate that used to sit off this coast ages ago. Almost all of that giant plate is gone now, swallowed up by the planet long before there were people to see it. These two little pieces are basically the only survivors. Keep that in the back of your mind, because one of the biggest shocks in this entire story comes straight out of that ancient giant's past. Now here's the problem. When one plate dives under another, it does not slide along nice and smooth. The two slabs get stuck on each other. They grind, they catch, and while they are stuck, pressure builds and builds and builds. For hundreds of years, The rock bends and strains like a giant spring being wound tighter and tighter and tighter. Then one day, it just cannot hold on anymore. The stuck part suddenly rips free all at once. And when it does, the ground does not gently shake. It lets go with a violent burst of energy that can level entire towns. This is the exact zone that scientists have been warning about for years. It is the one people call the Pacific Northwest's version of the big one. And they are not being dramatic when they say that. This type of fault can make an earthquake at magnitude 9. If that number does not mean much to you, let me put it a different way. A magnitude 9 is a true monster. It is the same size of quake that hit Japan back in 2011. That is the one that smashed towns, killed thousands of people, and sent a giant wall of water crashing over the coast. That disaster came from a diving plate zone just like this one. And the fault sitting off the Pacific Northwest is fully able to do the very same thing someday. And here's a fact that makes it feel a lot more real. The last time this zone let loose a giant one was more than 300 years ago, back in the year 1700. That was long before there were cities or cameras or highways along this coast. So how do we even know the exact date? Because that ancient quake sent a wall of water racing all the way across the ocean to Japan, where people watched it slam into their shores and carefully wrote down the day it happened. Years later, scientists matched that written record to dead trees and buried soil along the American coast, and the whole story lined up perfectly. Which means this fault has been quietly winding up its giant spring for more than 3 centuries now, with all that pressure slowly building the entire time. That is the part everyone already knew. The danger has been sitting there quietly for a long, long time. And here's the wild thing. Scientists have studied this place harder than almost any other fault on the planet. They have dropped sensors onto the seafloor. They have mapped the plates over and over. They have run the numbers 1,000 times. For decades, the experts felt pretty sure they understood what was down there and how the whole thing worked. And that confidence is exactly what makes these new discoveries so shocking. Because it turns out, after all those years of studying, they were still missing enormous pieces of the puzzle. Pieces the size of, well, plates. Because the first thing these scientists found does not just add a small detail to the map. It shows a plate doing something that had never once been seen before, anywhere on the entire planet. The slab. That's tearing itself apart. At the far northern end of this zone, up near Vancouver Island in Canada, a team of scientists set out to take the clearest look anyone had ever taken at the plate diving under the continent. And to do it, they used a really clever trick. You obviously cannot dig down miles into the seafloor to see what the rock is doing. So instead, scientists listen. Here's how that works. When energy moves through the ground, it travels differently through different kinds of rock. It speeds up, it slows down, and it bends depending on what it hits along the way. It is a little bit like how a doctor uses an ultrasound to see a baby without ever cutting anyone open. Sound goes in, bounces around inside, and comes back out carrying a picture. The scientists did the very same thing to the planet. They sent energy down, listened carefully to the echoes coming back, and slowly built a sharp, detailed image of the rock hidden deep beneath the ocean. And when they finally looked at that image, they saw something they were not ready for. The plate was not in one clean piece, it was tearing. Not in one big dramatic snap, like breaking a stick over your knee. It was ripping apart slowly, one section at a time. There were huge tears cutting right through the slab. And in one spot, the rock had dropped straight down by nearly 3 miles. Let that sink in for a second. There's a giant step in the rock down there, nearly 3 miles tall, taller than most mountains you have ever seen in your life. And it was made by one part of the plate breaking away and sinking, while the rest of it hung on for dear life. This had never been caught in the act before. Ever. Not once. Anywhere on the whole planet. Scientists had long guessed that plates might fall apart in a slow way like this because they kept finding leftover clues in very old, long-dead fault zones scattered around the world. But nobody had ever actually watched it happening in real time, with clear, solid data. This was the first time in history. And getting this image was not easy. To pull it off, the scientists had to take a ship out over the open ocean and spend a long time carefully sweeping the same patch of sea again and again, gathering signal after signal, until the picture was finally sharp enough to trust. This is slow, patient, expensive work. It is the kind of thing that takes years of planning and a whole team of people who really care about getting it exactly right. So when they finally saw the plate tearing itself apart in the data, it was not some lucky accident. It was the payoff for a mountain of hard work. So how does a whole plate tear itself apart? The scientists came up with a great way to picture it, and once you hear it, the whole thing just clicks. Think about a long train speeding down a track. Now imagine that instead of the entire train crashing all at once, someone starts cutting the cars loose one by one from the back. First, one car breaks off and falls behind. The train is now a little lighter, a little slower. Then another car snaps free. Slower again. Piece by piece, car by car, the train keeps losing the weight and the pull that was keeping it barreling forward. Do that for long enough, and the whole thing finally grinds to a stop. That is basically what is happening to this plate. Every time a chunk breaks off, the rest of the slab loses some of the downward pull that had been dragging it under the continent. And here is the strange twist. If you keep breaking pieces off for long enough, you can actually shut the entire thing down. The diving stops. The whole zone slowly dies. Scientists know this can happen because they have found other places around the world where a zone like this went quiet and stopped for good ages ago. They just never got to watch it start until now. There's even a clever little helper hiding in all of this. Running across the plate are certain cracks where two pieces of rock slide right past each other sideways, kind of like two cars zooming by in opposite lanes. Those sideways cracks act like a pair of scissors. They slice across the plate at just the right angle, and that makes it far easier for a chunk to snip free from the rest and drift off on its own. So the plate is not just randomly crumbling. It has natural cut lines built right into it, and those cut lines are quietly doing the work of the scissors, one clean snip at a time. And you can even see it happening in the earthquake pattern. Along one massive tear, about 45 miles long, some parts of the rock are still shaking with tiny earthquakes. But right next to them, other parts have gone completely silent. Dead quiet. And that silence actually tells the scientists something huge. When two pieces of rock are still stuck together and grinding, they make little earthquakes. But when a piece is fully snapped off, it stops. It is free now. It has nothing left to grind against. So that quiet stretch is not peaceful at all. It is the sign of a piece that has already broken away. And that silent gap is slowly growing bigger over time, creeping along like a crack spreading across a cracked phone screen. And honestly, that is a genuinely eerie thought when you sit with it. Somewhere down there in the cold and the dark, a piece of a giant plate has already quietly said goodbye to the rest of it, and it is now drifting off on its own, slowly sinking into the deep. There was no big boom, no warning, no shaking anyone could feel. Just a slow, silent parting, playing out over a stretch of time longer than humans have even walked the earth. Now, I know what you might be thinking right about now. A giant plate is ripping apart under the ocean, so we should all be freaking out, right? Actually, no. And this part really matters, so hang on. This tearing is not some countdown clock to doom. It is happening unbelievably slowly. Each single piece takes several million years to fully break away. Not years, not hundreds of years, millions of years. Nothing about this is going to happen in your lifetime, or your kids' lifetimes, or their kids' lifetimes, or 100 generations after that. When scientists say the plate is falling apart, they are describing a movie that plays out over a stretch of time so long that the human brain can barely even hold the idea. So this first discovery is not bad news at all. It is honestly one of the coolest wins in earthquake science in years. For the very first time, scientists got to watch a process they had only ever been able to guess at. It is like being a detective who spends a whole career finding footprints, and then one day finally catches the thing making them, alive and in person. It even helps explain old mysteries from other corners of the world, like strange leftover chunks of rock and weird bursts of ancient volcanoes that never quite made sense before. Now they finally do. It is a good reminder that the clues to how our planet really works are scattered all over the place. And every so often, one fresh discovery in one spot suddenly cracks open a dozen old puzzles from thousands of miles away. But as amazing as that discovery was, it is the second one that truly flipped the table over. Because while one team was up north watching a plate slowly come apart, another team was hundreds of miles to the south, staring hard at the most tangled and dangerous spot on the entire coast. And what they pulled out of the data was the closest thing to a real-life ghost that Earth science ever gets. The ghost that came back. To find this one, we have to travel south, down to a patch of ocean off the coast of Northern California, near a small town called Eureka. This little stretch of seafloor might just be the most complicated piece of ground in all of North America. And there's a very good reason for that. Remember how I said 2 plates are being shoved under the continent along this coast? Well, at this one special spot, 3 different plates all crashed together at the very same time. 3 of them. It is like a 3-car pileup that never ends, with each plate pushing and grinding in its own direction. Scientists call the meeting point a triple junction, but you do not need to remember that. Just picture the messiest, most crowded intersection you can imagine, with 3 giant slabs of rock all shoving into the same tight corner, and you have got the right idea. Because of all that shoving, this area shakes almost constantly and has a long, long history of powerful earthquakes. So a team of scientists decided to make the best map ever of what is really going on beneath all that chaos. But instead of using big earthquakes, they did something clever. They used the tiny ones. And I mean truly tiny. We are talking about thousands of little earthquakes so small that no human could ever feel a single one of them. They happen all the time down there, quietly, like the ground softly whispering to itself. Most people would call them useless, but to a scientist, each one is a tiny flash of light in a pitch-black cave. Line up thousands of those little flashes, and all of a sudden, you can see the shape of the whole room. It is a lot like one of those connect-the-dots puzzles you did as a kid. On its own, a single dot tells you basically nothing. It is just a dot. But when you have thousands of them and you connect them in the right order, a clear picture appears out of what looks like total nonsense. That is exactly what these scientists did. They connected the dots left behind by all those tiny quakes, and slowly a whole hidden world came into view, deep beneath the seafloor in a place no human eye has ever actually looked. They lined them up. They built their brand new map, and that is exactly when the ghost showed up. Buried down there, they found a chunk of an ancient plate that was supposed to be long gone. And to understand why that is so shocking, you need a quick bit of backstory. I promise it is worth it. A very, very long time ago, way before there were any people, and even before most of the animals you know today, there was a truly massive plate sitting off the west coast. It was enormous. Over millions and millions of years, it got shoved under North America and swallowed up by the planet, melted back into the hot rock deep below. Almost all of it disappeared. Gone. The two little plates still diving under the coast right now are basically the last surviving scraps of that ancient giant. Everything else got eaten by the Earth ages ago, or at least that is what everyone believed. Because these scientists found a piece of that ancient plate that never got swallowed, it is still down there. It should have vanished around 30 million years ago, right along with all the rest of it. But it did not. Instead of sinking down into the planet and melting away like its brothers and sisters, this one stubborn chunk got stuck. It grabbed onto the giant Pacific plate, which is the single biggest plate on all of Earth, and it has been hitching a free ride ever since. The scientists gave the survivor a name. They call it the Pioneer Fragment. Now think about how strange that really is. This is a piece of the planet that everyone was completely sure had died and dissolved 30 million years ago. And it is not dead. It has been quietly riding along underneath the seafloor this entire time, hiding right in plain sight while the rest of its family melted away deep underground. For the scientists, finding it is a bit like an animal that everyone was certain went extinct millions of years ago, suddenly being spotted alive and well, calmly strolling through the forest like it never left at all. And it is not just sitting there being spooky. As the giant Pacific plate slides slowly to the northwest, it is dragging this ancient ghost chunk along with it, scraping it right underneath the very edge of the continent. The fault where it is grinding along is almost totally flat, laid out sideways, and completely hidden from the surface. You could stand right on top of it on solid ground and never have the faintest clue that a 30-million-year-old piece of a dead plate is quietly sliding along beneath your feet. And this ghost chunk is not staying put. Bit by bit, year after year, it keeps creeping to the northwest along with the giant plate that is carrying it. It has been on this slow, silent journey for millions of years already, and it is still going right now. It is like a stowaway who snuck onto a ship so long ago that everyone forgot they were ever there, and they are still quietly riding along in the cargo hold, going wherever the ship goes. Except this stowaway is a slab of ancient rock the size of a region, and the ship carrying it is the single biggest plate on the entire planet. That one find alone would be enough to rewrite the science books. But the team spotted one more thing in the same data, and this one might matter even more than the ghost. They found that a piece of the North American plate itself, the plate that our whole continent sits on, has actually broken clean off. It's snapped away from the mainland. And now that broken chunk is sinking down into the planet alongside one of the diving ocean plates, getting pulled under right along with it. So a piece of the continent itself, the ground under North America, is being dragged down into the deep. Take a second to really picture that one. We usually think of the continent we live on as the solid, safe, unmovable thing. It is the ground. It is home. It is the part that is supposed to stay put while the ocean plates do all the diving and grinding. But now scientists have caught a piece of that home breaking off and sinking away into the planet, right alongside the ocean rock. The ground itself, the very part we always trusted to hold still under our feet, turns out to be shedding pieces, too. Now let's add all of this up, because this is the exact moment the map really changed forever. For a very long time, the map of this area was simple and clean. 3 plates meeting at one messy corner. 3 moving pieces. That is what was printed in the textbooks. That is what the warnings and the danger models were all built on top of. But now the scientists have counted the real pieces, and it is not 3. It is at least 5. You have got the 3 original plates, plus the ancient ghost chunk riding along under the continent, plus the broken off piece of North America sinking into the deep, 5 separate slabs of rock, all moving in their own directions, all grinding against each other in the same tight little space. And 2 of those 5 pieces were total surprises. Nobody had confirmed they were even there until this study came out. Just sit with that for a second. This is one of the most studied, most watched, most carefully mapped danger zones in the entire country. And scientists just found 2 hidden moving pieces that had been down there the whole time. It is like living in the same house your entire life, and then one day finding 2 extra rooms behind a wall you had walked past every single day. So the map is now a very different thing than it used to be. But a more complicated map is not just a fun fact for scientists to argue about over coffee. It changes something very real. Because every single one of those hidden moving pieces is a new place where pressure can quietly build up. And pressure building up is exactly how earthquakes are born. Which leads us straight to the question you have probably been waiting to ask this whole time. Does any of this actually make a big earthquake more likely? Why 5 is scarier than 3? Let's clear up one thing right away, because it is the question everybody jumps to. Finding these extra pieces does not mean an earthquake is suddenly going to hit tomorrow. It does not mean the danger jumped up overnight. That is not what happened here. So take a breath. But there is still a real reason all of this matters, and it comes down to one simple idea. More moving pieces means more places for trouble to build. Here's why. Every single spot where 2 chunks of rock press against each other is a spot where pressure can pile up. And every spot where pressure piles up is a spot where an earthquake can one day start. So when the map jumps from 3 pieces up to 5 pieces, you're not just tossing in 2 extra rocks. You're adding brand new surfaces where slabs rub together. New places where stress can quietly gather in secret. New spots that could someday slip and shake. Spots nobody was even watching before. Think of it like a room full of stretched rubber bands, all hooked together and pulling hard on each other. If you only knew about 3 of them, you might feel pretty good about guessing when and where one would finally snap. But now imagine you find out there are actually 5 and 2 of them were hidden behind the others the whole time, also stretched tight, also pulling. All of a sudden, your guess gets a lot shakier. You have got more moving parts, more ways for the whole thing to give way, and more places you are not even keeping an eye on. That is the real headache for the scientists. Their whole job is to figure out how big a future earthquake here could be and where it might hit. To do that, they build models, which are really just very careful, detailed guesses based on every piece they know about. So when you suddenly hand them 2 brand new hidden pieces, every one of those guesses has to be reworked from scratch. The picture got more tangled. And a more tangled picture is a harder picture to predict. And these are not just numbers floating around on a screen somewhere. These guesses decide real things in real life. They help decide how strong a new school or hospital has to be built so it will not fall down in a big shake. They help decide which neighborhoods get warned first and how much families end up paying to protect their homes. So when the picture shifts, all of those real choices have to shift right along with it. That is why scientists cannot just shrug and move on when they turn up a couple of surprise pieces. Those pieces ripple straight out into decisions that touch millions of people living all along this coast. And this is not just a bunch of scientists doing math on a whiteboard for fun. We already have proof, out in the real world, that these hidden pieces can make earthquakes all on their own. Go back to December of 2022. A magnitude 6.4 earthquake struck near a town called Ferndale in that same messy corner of Northern California. It was strong enough to crack homes, knock out power, and rattle a whole lot of nerves. And when scientists later looked very closely at exactly how that earthquake happened, they found something that fits this whole story perfectly. That quake did not come from the main danger zone. It did not come from the giant boundary where the ocean plate dives under the continent, the one that could make the truly enormous magnitude 9 monster someday. Instead, it came from inside one of the diving plates itself. The plate was not behaving like one solid, quiet, calm slab riding smoothly down into the planet. It was cracking and shifting on the inside, grinding sideways against its own self and making its very own earthquake in the process. That is a big deal, and here's why. For a long time, it was easy to picture these diving plates as single, stiff sheets of rock sliding down in one clean, quiet piece. But the Ferndale quake showed that this simply is not true. These plates are busy breaking up on the inside. They have got their own hidden cracks, their own built-up pressure, and their own power to shake the ground, completely separate from the giant boundary everyone worries about the most. So the danger is not just one big fault sitting there by itself. It is a whole crowd of them, and some of them are tucked away inside the plates themselves. So picture the whole scene now. You do not just have one giant crack to worry about. You have the main boundary, plus all these smaller cracks hiding inside the diving plates, plus the fresh surfaces around those 2 brand new hidden pieces we just talked about. It is less like a single clean crack in a sidewalk, and more like a car windshield that took a rock to the glass and spidered out into a whole web of little cracks running in every direction. And any one of those cracks, given enough time and enough pressure, could turn out to be the one that finally gives. And then the scientists studying Ferndale noticed one more thing. This might be the most important clue of all. After the main quake, they spotted a small, slow shift happening on that giant main boundary nearby. Not another earthquake. No shaking at all. Just a quiet, gradual slide like the fault was slowly stretching in its sleep, and it looked like the Ferndale quake had nudged it into moving. In other words, one fault shook, and that shake reached over and gently pushed on a completely different fault right next door. That is the part that should really make you sit up straight. These faults are not living in their own separate little bubbles. They are connected. They talk to each other. When one lets go, it can quietly hand some of its stress over to its neighbor, kind of like one person leaning on another and slowly shifting their weight across. And if faults can pass pressure back and forth like that, then figuring out the true danger gets a whole lot harder. You cannot just study one crack at a time and call it a day. You have to understand how the entire tangled family works together. Now let's zoom out even further, because this whole faults talk to each other idea has one more twist that widens the danger far beyond this one little corner of California. You have almost certainly heard of the San Andreas Fault. It is the famous one. It is the crack that runs through California and threatens big cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Now here is something a lot of people never realize. The San Andreas Fault does not just sit off on its own in the middle of the state. Its northern tip runs right into the same messy triple junction we have been talking about this whole time. The giant Pacific Northwest danger zone and the famous California danger zone basically bump right into each other at the exact same crowded spot. Two of the scariest fault systems in the entire country meeting at one tiny corner. And some scientists think that a giant earthquake on the Pacific Northwest zone could actually reach over and set off the San Andreas next. Picture that. One monster quake up north nudging its famous neighbor down south into going off too. If that is even possible, then the danger is not two separate problems in two separate places. It is one huge, connected system, and a disaster in one part could ripple straight into the other. That is exactly why finding all this extra hidden structure right at the meeting point matters so much. It is more and more proof that scientists cannot keep treating these faults like total strangers who never speak to each other. They act a lot more like one big, restless, connected machine, with pieces pushing and pulling on each other in ways we are only just starting to see. So after all of that, here's the big question you actually care about. If you live near this coast, what does any of this really mean for you? Should you be scared? Should you change anything at all? Let's get honest about it. So should you actually worry? Here's the honest answer, and I think it is actually kind of a relief once you hear it the right way. Nothing that these scientists found makes an earthquake more likely today than it was last week or last year. The danger did not grow. A big quake is not more likely tomorrow because of these discoveries. The ground did not get any more dangerous overnight. What changed is not the risk at all. What changed is how clearly we can finally see it. Think about it this way. Imagine you have been driving down the same dark road for years with weak, dim headlights. The road always had the same sharp curves and the same steep drop-offs on the side. Then one day, you get bright new headlights. Suddenly you can see every curve way better than before. The road did not get more dangerous, you just finally got a clear look at what had been there the whole time. That is exactly what happened here. The danger was always down there. The plates were always moving. Scientists just got themselves a much better set of headlights. And that is genuinely good news, because the clearer the picture gets, the better everything built on top of it becomes. Better maps of the danger lead to smarter building rules, so new homes and bridges are made to survive a big shake. They lead to better plans for emergency crews, so help can rush to the right places faster when it counts. They even shape how insurance works and how whole towns get ready. Every hidden piece the scientists uncover slowly makes all of that a little sharper and a little more honest. This is how earthquake science has always moved forward. Not with one magic answer that solves everything, but with slow, patient work, one clue at a time, slowly turning up the lights in a dark room. And every time those lights come up a little more, we actually get a little safer, even though nothing about the danger itself has changed one bit. A hidden fault you know about is far less scary than one you have no idea is there. A pressure point you can watch is a whole lot better than one lurking in the dark where nobody's looking. So in a strange way, discoveries like these are the good guys of the story. They do not make the ground shake any harder. They just quietly take away some of the nasty surprises. There's also something kind of humbling in all of this, and honestly, I love this part. This coast is one of the most studied stretches of ground on the entire planet. Scientists have poured decades of hard work into it. And here we are in the middle of the 2020s, and they are still finding brand new pieces they never knew were there. Whole chunks of rock moving around in the dark that we somehow completely missed. If that is true for the most watched fault around, it really makes you wonder what else is still hiding under our feet in all the places we have studied a lot less. The planet is still keeping secrets, even in the spots we were sure we knew best. So no, you should not be scared by these headlines. But if you live anywhere along this coast from Northern California up through Oregon, Washington, and into Canada, They are a good little nudge to do something smart, not out of panic, just out of being ready, the same way you keep a spare tire in your car without ever expecting to get a flat. If your home is on the older side, it is worth finding out whether it has been strengthened to handle a big quake, because older buildings are the ones that struggle the most when the ground moves. It is worth keeping a simple emergency kit somewhere easy to grab, with enough water, food, and any medicine your family needs to last several days, since a huge quake here could knock out roads and power across a wide area all at once. And if you live right near the coast, take 5 minutes to learn your escape route to higher ground, because a giant quake on this zone could send a wall of water toward shore with very little warning. None of that takes much time or money, but if the day ever comes, it is the difference between scrambling in fear and knowing exactly what to do. And here's something worth holding on to. Getting ready is not about living in fear. It is actually the complete opposite. The people who feel the calmest about all of this are usually the ones who already did the small stuff a long time ago. They have their water stored. They know their plan. They have talked it over with their family at the dinner table. So when a scary headline pops up on their phone, they can read it, nod, and go right back to their day, because they already handled it. That kind of calm is something you can give yourself in a single quiet afternoon. That is the real takeaway here. The Earth under this coast is stranger, busier, and more alive than we ever pictured. And every surprising thing scientists dig up does not make the world more dangerous. It just makes us a little more ready for it. If you made it all the way to the end of this, you are exactly the kind of person who takes this stuff seriously, and I really respect that. If the video helped you understand what is happening under your feet, a quick genuinely helps more families find it too. Before you go, I really want to hear from you. If you live near this coast, drop a comment and tell me, do you already have an earthquake kit and an escape plan ready to go? Or is this the video that is finally going to push you to put one together? I read every single comment and I honestly want to know. And if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, I made another video on exactly how the big one could unfold along this coast, minute by minute. It will pop up right here on the screen, so go check it out when you finish here. But before you close this out, I want to leave you with the most important thing I will say in this entire video. All of this, the shaking, the water, the plans, none of it is really about rocks or faults or science. It is about the people asleep down the hall from you tonight. It is about being the one your family can look at when everything goes dark, when they are scared and do not know what is happening, and being able to say, "It is okay, I have got you. We know exactly what to do." Do not let yourself be standing in a pitch-black house one day, with your kids holding on to you and crying, wishing you had spent one quiet afternoon getting ready when you had the chance. That is a feeling no parent and no person should ever have to carry. So please do this one thing for the people you love. Go down to the description right now, or tap the pinned comment at the very top, and grab the Family Disaster Survival System while it is right in front of you. It lays out every single step in plain, simple words, so your whole family knows what to do long before they ever need to. Getting it today might honestly be the most loving thing you do all week. Your future self and the people who mean the most to you will thank you for it. Do it now and take care of each other out there.